and our climate envoy Jennifer Morgan are here this afternoon is very important, I think, for all of us, because these are two relevant countries in the global climate arena. And you are demonstrating that you are taking our Track 2 dialogue very serious. And therefore, I thank you very much in the name of all participants of our Track 2 dialogue, all the 40 Chinese and German experts working in this context. I thank you in the name of all of them that you are here to speak to us. This is a very important signal how important this dialogue is, because the agreement is that this dialogue should help our two countries, our two governments, to move towards an ambitious 1.5 oriented and compatible trajectory, economic trajectory in both countries, and giving signals to the world to move into this direction globally. So this is highly relevant. And I'm sure that you will enjoy our discussion. The two ministers will talk to us in a second, but before I'm handing over to you, my vice chair, of course, will also welcome you. So Professor Chu, please.
Thank you, Messina. Her Excellency, Ms. Jennifer Morgan, State Secretary of Germany Federal Foreign Affairs and Special Avenue for International Climate Action. His Excellency Mrs. Zhao Yingming, Vice Minister of Ecology and Environment of China. My dear counterpart, Dr. Messina, distinguished guests and colleagues, warm welcome to this side event co-hosted by Germany Environment Agency and the National Center for Climate Change Strategy and International Cooperation, and to jointly explore China's and Germany's contribution to the acceleration of the renewable energy expansion in light of the global stocktake. As we know, the first round of GST is undergoing and will provide all countries and societies the right to guide their further enhanced climate actions to address our common challenges of climate crisis. Among any potential decisions we will make here in Dubai to accelerate the development and deployment of renewable energy would definitely be one of the key ways forward. Under the guidance of the Minister of Ecological and Environment of China and the German Federal Foreign Office, the experts from Germany and China formulate a mechanism called Sino-German Track 2 Dialogue for Climate Change and Sustainable Development in 2020. We have conducted fruit dialogues during the past 3 years, even during the difficult situation of COVID-19. The Track 2 Dialogue experts started to share our views with a wider audience in COP27 last year in China Pavilion, and received positive feedback from both governments and experts. It encouraged us to host such sharing this time in German Pavilion. I believe this event today will broaden the cooperation with all other institutes and experts, will deepen our joint understanding of the role of renewable energy, and will inspire climate actions in our own country and also globally. I wish you a pleasant 1.5 hours with us. Thank you for your participating. Thank you.
So, dear ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving to the high-level segment of our panel this afternoon. We are focusing during the discussions on renewable energies. We have a global debate on Factor 3 development of renewable energies and how to combine this with phasing out fossil fuels. So this is the focus of our joint event this afternoon. And without further ado, I would like to ask Vice Minister Zhao to give his keynote address. Please come to the floor. Thank you.
Distinguished Mrs. Jennifer Morgan, distinguished Mr. Messner, ladies and gentlemen, good day. I'm very happy to once every year to be able to come together with you at the COP meetings, and I'm also very happy to be able to participate in this side event of the Sino-German Track 2 dialogue on climate change and sustainable development. I would like to congratulate this side event on its opening, and I would also like to thank all of our researchers here for their long-standing support in the area of climate change. Climate change has become a crisis that the world is facing together, and abnormal climate events have brought about significant impacts on lives, productions, and livelihoods of people in all countries. This is particularly the case for developing countries with loss and damages. So strengthening global cooperation will be important and will be a priority for responding to the climate crisis. The UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement has provided an important basis for global processes, and has also given us important principles. Once a year when we come together at the COP, this is because of the UNFCCC and because of the Paris Agreement, where we come together to talk about how we can respond to issues that humankind is facing together. We are also very happy that at the opening ceremony at this COP, the COP28, we were able to adopt arrangements for the loss and damage fund. And this is something that we all parties should celebrate together. So we also hope that the fund will be able to efficiently operate and to operate in a transparent environment going forward. And this is also thanks to the endeavors of the German side. The global stocktake is an important task of this COP. We need to cooperate together and act together to summarize the processes of the implementation of the Paris Agreement, and to be aware of the situations and development stages in different countries. We need to work together to fight climate change, solve food security issues, poverty issues, as well as energy security issues. We need to promote cooperation to promote a just transition. This means that emission reduction aspects need to be taken into consideration, and gaps in emission reductions, funds and technologies between different countries. This means that we need to work together more actively to be able to come up with solutions, and on that basis then achieve feasible progress. I believe that when it comes to climate change, no country should be left behind. And the Chinese side hopes to be able to further increase its dialogue and exchange and cooperation with the EU and Germany to further enhance our green development cooperation partnership for the benefit of developing countries, and to make a contribution to green development as well as a global ecological civilization. The Chinese government takes climate change very seriously, and we have made a historic contribution to the implementation and the entry into force of the Paris Agreement. We participate and shape the global order with the personal implementation and involvement of President Xi Jinping. We have implemented our national strategy and are endeavoring to achieve our carbon peaking and hydrogen, our peaking, as well as neutrality targets. We have also achieved a installed capacity of renewable energies of 1.2 trillion. As a result of that, we have been able to significantly increase renewable energies. We are also controlling non-GHGs as well as methane gases. For instance, last month, we issued the methane action plan, which lays out the responsibilities and tasks for in the next step. In addition to that, we're also promoting the development of the green and low carbon industry. This industry has become an important part of high quality development. PV batteries, propulsion batteries, and so on are developing rapidly. We contribute 50% of wind equipment and 80% of PV equipment globally. This means that our installation capacity for renewables has been expanded significantly, and at the same time we have helped the world to reduce low carbon transition costs. This has allowed developing countries to have access and to be able to afford renewable energies. And when it comes to forest coverage, we have increased this further. Currently, we have a forest coverage of over 20%. We have also, 2 years ago, set up the largest allowance ETS system that covers more than 5 billion tons in allowances of CO2 in allowances. The CCR, the voluntary market, is also being launched, and we hope that we will be able to launch the national CCR market by the end of this year. As a responsible developing country, we also support South-South cooperation and provide funding for this. With over 40 developing countries, we have signed 48 South-South cooperation documents. We have also carried out mitigation and adaptation projects and trained in more than 120 developing countries officials for climate change as well as expert for climate change. These specific actions have supported developing countries in replying and reducing replying to loss and damage and reducing loss and damage caused by climate change. China and Germany, as well as China and the EU, have been working together actively in the area of climate change. In this year, Ding Xuexiang, together with Vice President Timmermans, held the high-level dialogue on climate and environment between the EU and China, and agreed to further support the results of COP28 when it comes to new energy. In other areas, we have been able to expand our cooperation. The cooperation between Germany and China is not just limited to the government cooperation. Also, based on the recommendation of experts between Germany and China in 2020, we were able to set up the Track 2 dialogue between Germany and China for climate change and sustainable development. This allows us to talk about good practices when it comes to green development and climate change, and to explore different low
I hope the Track 2 dialogue mechanism will continue to play a positive role so as to empower leading experts and think tanks to give recommendations to policymakers. By doing so, we can enhance mutual learning and experience sharing on best practices. This will contribute to our bilateral exchange and cooperation on climate change. And this will create a synergy between G2G engagement and the Track 2 engagement. Let's work together to further empower the bilateral cooperation so as to jointly combat climate change. Thank you.
So we thank you very much, Vice Minister Zhao, for your encouraging words. And I would like to hand over directly to our climate envoy, Jennifer Morgan. Please, Jennifer.
Well, thank you so much, Vice Minister, for being here. Welcome to the German Pavilion. And to all my old friends from China, welcome. And I agree. Let's continue on the collaboration. I think, you know, the role of scientists, the role of researchers, the role of experts in our journey, in our helping governments make the policy decisions that are so needed, is so vital, and that we make smart, informed decisions as we move forward. And so I very much want to just highlight the value to us of this Sino-German Track 2 dialogue, which is already in the second phase. And you mentioned how it was a tough time when I think you were just communicating through little pictures on a screen. And I know the first time I was able and went to China this past spring, just what a difference it makes, and so wonderful that we're continuing this. So thank you for all the scientists and researchers from China and for Germany who are moving that forward. I think the format, it enables us to have an open exchange in a confidential setting, also about some of the more controversial issues that you might not want to have in a public setting, but to figure it out together. And I think it also, these Track 2 dialogues, they help gain understanding of each other's position. You have time to go deeper. And you need to go deeper to understand before you can kind of come out and find the solutions. And the technical and scientific work there is essential. And I think it's also a very good format to exchange on best practices and lessons learned. Because we don't have time right now. You know, we have this 1.5 degree limit that we're all trying to stay within to make the same mistakes. So we can share the mistakes that we've made. We can learn from the mistakes of you, but also from the positive examples, which there are many, and find solutions together. And I think that's important with the view to today's topic, the energy transformation. The transformation of the energy systems, we know that is essential to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement and enable resilient economic development. And I think the impressive renewable energy globally, which is better than predicted. I can say my last organization where I worked for had an energy revolution, which is Greenpeace, had an energy revolution study, which everyone thought was just crazy, could never be met. Well, it actually was the closest one, and it even was under where we are now. So I think we've just seen a tremendous growth, better than predicted, but we know we need to get further, and that's why Germany and the European Union and many other countries are supporting the inclusion of a concrete global collective energy targets in the GST decision here, a tripling of renewable energy, a doubling of the efficiency rate, and a just and step-by-step phase out of fossil fuels so that we can create that fossil-free energy system in line with 1.5 in a step-by-step just way. And of course, you know, each country has to decide, and I think that's where these exchanges can happen. What's the pathway? What's your pathway? What's our pathway to net zero aligned with 1.5? What does it look like? How do we transform our energy systems? But I think it's important that we agree collectively on the direction and the pace as concretely as possible without interfering with each other's country's sovereignty. And that's where I think this place, the COPs, are so helpful to set that collective direction that we're going in. Of course, one can't, I can't even speak how impressed I am and we are by the renewables development in China. It really is, you currently have 1,320 gigawatts, which is more than 10 times the German capacity of 127 gigawatts. Tremendous. And I think that's a very good signal that studies indicate that China's emissions actually will fall in 2024 due to the large renewable energy additions. At the same time, I think we have been working in Germany on how to combine energy security, climate security, and economic security in a just phase out of fossil fuels. And so I think also if China starts to also reduce its coal consumption in the next years, that will be very much appreciated by the international community, which thinks back to the words of President Xi in this regards at the Climate Leaders Summit in 2021. I think our German experience, I won't spend too much time on it. I know we just had a fantastic visit from China to Germany. I think one of the lessons we have is that our dependency on imported fossil fuels was and continues to be the biggest threat to German energy security, and hence the decision to further speed up our energy transition in Germany to become independent. Renewable energy is even seen as freedom energy in Germany. And so the plan to generate 80% of our electricity from renewable energy by 2030, decarbonize our power sector completely by 2035, and we're on good track. Already by October, we're at 55% of the power consumption in Germany was supplied by renewables, and I just got fact, we're over 70% in some of the months that we've had. So I think the other key piece, obviously, is decreasing our energy demand and an increased energy efficiency, and we're working on this as well, and last month our national energy efficiency law came into effect. We're also working to make our grid. I think if I talk to any expert, it's about the grid everywhere. How do we make our grids fit and flexible for this energy system that we are building? And I think this is a big task, but it also really makes sense from an economic point of view, rather than building new gas or new coal as a backup, because you have the risk of the stranded assets, and also because of the falling costs of renewable energy. So we offer to continue to share our experiences in the German energy transition. Also, as I said, the lessons we've learned, and we've learned a lot over the last, 20 years, Dirk? 20-something years. China has also been at this for a long time, but can continue to do that through our cooperation through this Track 2 dialogue, but also the projects of our International Climate Initiative as well. And I think the visit to Cottbus, I understand from the China team, was very interesting to learn more about our coal exit and how important social cohesion is and a just transition out of coal. So I look forward to continuing to be briefed on what you are finding, what your recommendations are to us. I think it couldn't be more current. I mean, hopefully we can make some of these decisions here to give those signals, but how we do it together, that is a key, how we are able to combine that economic security, energy security, and climate security. We too were very, very pleased to have the Loss and Damage Fund be the decision that started this COP. We were extremely pleased to have the chance to match our contribution of 100 million with the United Arab Emirates, which has triggered more than $500 million contributions to that fund in just a couple of days. But we know that there will never be enough funds for that fund unless we stay within 1.5. So let's look forward to you all getting to work, and look forward to working with you over the coming 2 weeks to send the signals to the world, to give them hope, and to give all of our experts even more work to do. Thanks so much.
So, thank you very much, Jennifer, for your words. I think They are more than welcomed. It was interesting to listen to you that only 10 years ago, Greenpeace scenarios looked very utopian, and things have been changing, right? And we are now moving into the next phases of our afternoon here. And before we go to the next keynote speaker, I would like to show you very briefly 3 or 4 slides to give us the big picture, which we are going to dive in afterwards then. So we go directly to the next slide. It is now about the energy dimension of the climate ambition we are going to talk about. You all know this picture probably. So the global stock stake will be an issue for one of our next keynote speakers. The main message here is we have been doing many things, we have been changing many sectors, we know what we have to do, but still we are on a 2.6 to 3.2 degrees pathway. This is actually a non-acceptable pathway still, and we have to work so hard to make the 1.5 to 2 degrees, well below 2 degrees, a reality. This is the starting point. We all have to accept this. More ambition is needed. The next slide, I think, goes to the stocktake itself, and we'll skip it because Mrs. Textor will talk about this afterwards. I wanted to give you some figures, next slide please, about the global and the Chinese and the German energy markets. So here you see the global energy markets. On the right hand, on the top, from 2000 to 2022, what you can see here is that renewables, Jennifer, this was your point, no? Renewables started very, very slowly. And many of our discussions move to the point that at the end of the day, it might be impossible to build a fossil fuel energy system, but things are now changing, interestingly, at a very rapid pace. If you look to 2022, for example, we know now that from now on, 2022 to 2027, globally, we will see more renewable energy-based capacities added to the global energy markets than we saw during the 20 years before. So we are on a factor 2, a factor 4 pathway already compared to 2022. But on the right-hand side, the net zero emission scheme here is much more ambitious. You see that we have to accelerate even more the renewable energies on the one hand side and phase out coal and phase out fossil fuels in general towards mid-century. On the left-hand side, you can see that compared to 2022, to the net zero emission scenario, for PV and wind, we need factor 3.5 to factor 4 to make a defossilized energy system in 2050 possible. This is the pathway which we need to move forward. On the next slide, you can see Germany then, because Jennifer and Vice Minister Chow, you spoke about learning from each other. No? So this is the German trajectory. On the left-hand side, you see the pathway of renewable energies growing as an element of our energy system very rapidly from 2000 to 2022. Jennifer, you mentioned that already the share of renewables in the electricity market is around 40–45%. This is already an achievement because we started with 4%, 5% only 20 years ago. No? The goal for 2030 is 80%, and then for 2035 it is 100%. And we will debate on our panel afterwards how challenging this is, of course, because we have to bring together, Professor Chu, we discussed this very oftenly so, we have to bring together defossilization with energy security and energy stability. We are going to discuss afterwards how this is possible. Then on the last slide, and already coming to the end of my brief presentation here, is Jennifer and Vice Minister Chow, what you mentioned. No? This is the Chinese pathway. On the left-hand side, you can see the Chinese investments in solar, electricity, dynamics, and then on wind investments. And what you can see here is that China, during the last 3 years, have been investing more in these 2 areas than India, the European Union, and the United States all together. So this is impressive, isn't it? On the one hand side. On the other hand side, there is also a challenge in China. Our challenge is how to get our 100% in 2035 stable, secure, and resilient. Your challenge is that you have very high investments, you are adding so many renewable energies, but compared with the shares then within your electricity markets, you are around 15% only. The rest is still fossil. So the challenge in China is how to move out of fossil fuels and build even more and invest even more in the renewable energy field. Being compatible with net zero trajectories towards 2030, 2050, China needed to produce more or less 50% of its energy system, the electricity market, being based on renewables. And we in the European Union tried to do around 55% at this point in time. And as I said, in Germany, 80% in 2030. So this is the overall picture globally in China and in Germany. And we are now step by step diving into the different issues which we want to discuss with you. And I would like to ask first Mrs. Textor to come to the floor. And you are going to present to us the current discussions about the global stocktake. Because at the end of the day, all what we are doing is aiming at 1.5 at the end of the day. And the global stocktake is showing us that we are still relatively far away from that. So please, could you inform us how the negotiations are moving forward in this regard? Please. Yeah. Thank you very much. See you next time in Beijing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Mrs. Textor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Is sound okay? Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm coming directly from the engine room of the negotiations to you and will report on the global stocktake. I'm going to briefly explain where it comes from. It's part of the Paris Agreement, and then explain its modalities and its objectives, and also talk about what's happening here at COP and what we are hoping for and where we stand at the moment. So as you know, in 2015, when the Paris Agreement was agreed, the three long-term goals of the Paris Agreement, it was already quite clear that it will not immediately be possible to reach or to keep warming below 2 degrees, or hopefully at 1.5 degree at most. Sorry. So already in Paris, it was decided to build into the Paris Agreement an ambition cycle, which would every 5 years review the progress, the collective progress towards reaching the Paris Agreement's long-term global goals. So every 5 years, parties discuss how far the world is, and then 2 years later, new nationally determined contributions will be submitted. So it's going on and on like that. Super. Vielen Dank. Yeah, so the Paris Agreement, just this regular review is built into the Paris Agreement. But it was not yet clear at the beginning how this would evolve. So parties discussed that for quite a while, and in 2017, so 2 years after the Paris Agreement was agreed, it was clear how this would evolve. So it would contain or include a technical phase where people would look at all the information available, including the best available science from the IPCC, reports from the Enhanced Transparency Framework of the Paris Agreement, and other reports available, including UNEP and also from agencies and from many, many non-party stakeholders. So I've just checked. It's thousands of documents and 170,000 pages, which are have been considered or are there to be considered by parties. Also, many practitioners came and exchanged their experiences. There were at 3 subsequent SB subsidiary bodies meetings, there were a lot of events as part of the technical dialogue. And people met 252 hours in total. And it was not only like this kind of style, there were also world cafes. And I remember in Bonn at the first meeting, we were just under stairs. And it was really very informal, and people could discuss it with each other and really learn from each other. And there was no recording. There were these graphical designers, graphical recordings, so people could really freely talk to each other and understand better where the barriers are and the challenges, and also what the options for action are. And I think already this learning experience, this exchange, was very valuable. And then after each of these technical dialogues, there was a summary report published by the co-facilitators of this dialogue, and that was 2 renowned experts, scientists, who also work in the convention for a long time. And they designed all the formats, was very innovative also for this process, where normally we sit around tables and in a very diplomatic manner. So that was really great. So they had these 3 summary reports, and then this autumn also a synthesis report summarizing all this huge experience into 17 key messages. And you can imagine that this showed that we're not doing enough. We are too slow. 1.5 is getting out of reach if we do not really enhance ambition a lot. It also showed that there is not enough support for developing countries, in particular the most vulnerable groups. And also there is a huge lack of money for adaptation and also mitigation. So it's a bit frightening, this picture, but at the same time there was a lot of discussions about solutions. So there is a lot of things which can be done at the international level, like what we're doing here, learning from each other, global climate clubs, a lot of initiatives, but also on the ground when people implement, for example, adaptation. They have the choice between building a dam, like a stone thing, or something which is made of trees, so protect ecosystems. And there is a lot of experience in the world, and I think, or I personally lived through these dialogues, and it was really enriching. But now we have had this many hours of technical dialogue, and now the facts are on the table. And since last June, parties discuss what to do with this, to take conclusions. It's called the consideration of output phase, the political phase. And it started last June at the end of the technical dialogues, and parties of the convention considered only the structure of the decision, and that was already difficult. So it was, since the Paris Agreement has 3 long-term global goals, one would think there would be 3 sections on this, but there was also, or is, a lot of controversy. Should the global stocktake rather be backward-looking? So what has happened in the past, and why are we here where we are? Stocktake, you would think, is backward-looking. But then it's also part of the ambition cycle, so it should be forward-looking. And how can we still reach the goals of the Paris Agreement? And so this forward and backward-looking aspect was a very important point of controversy. And then also what to look at, the 3 Paris Agreement goals. But then we have also, as you have seen here, loss and damage is also very important. So we have now also in this tentative structure a section on loss and damage in the potential decision which we will have here, and also one on response measures. And we have a preambular, and we have cross-cutting, and that's also very important. The global stocktake, according to its mandate, needs to be based on best available science, which is commonly accepted, the IPCC, but also other reports. And I've also worked in the IPCC, and it's really a very tedious process, and in my view, this is the best available science. And science always makes progress So this is the best we have, and the science clearly shows that peaking must happen yesterday. We can say that. And that is not part of the scenarios. And it's clear that emissions need to fall as quickly as possible. That's also very clear. So the best available science and also equity. There's a lot of discussion, of course, around equity. So who has to contribute most, who has to take the lead in terms of action, but also support. And this is, I would say, one of the most challenging problems of the GST, that there is still this divide, and the world is not just at the moment. But looking into the future, we can only do it together. And then my personal view is that we really can see from the global stocktake that there are things we can do together, and also what we just saw here in this dialogue is showing that it's useful for everyone to work together. Okay, and then I am optimistic that we will have a decision in the end of these 2 weeks. I just briefly say what's the objectives of the global stocktake. So enhanced action and support clearly needs to be the result. To have updated NDCs, which include more specific goals, so supporting the 3 long-term goals, and that includes the tripling of renewable energies, energy efficiency, a lot of things. For adaptation, it's more difficult because there are still ongoing discussions or negotiations on the global goal on adaptation. So there the global stocktake will profit and hopefully be coherent with the JGA, the global goal on adaptation framework. And then there's also the third Paris Agreement goal, the Article 21C, is the alignment of global finance flows with the goals of the Paris Agreement. And there has not been a lot of discussion on this issue. It's debated. But since public money will not be enough, there's just not enough money in the public pockets, and therefore the global investments should support the global transformation, complementary to the public money. And that's also one of the important goals. And then, of course, the support, how much money are flying, given into which side, so that together we can implement the Paris Agreement and show, and I think really the world is watching us. Does the Paris Agreement deliver or not? And the global stocktake has to show that, yes, we are still decided as the world community to implement the Paris Agreement for the best of future generations. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for this context, the debate about the global stocktake this year. Now we move forward to Professor An. Professor An is from the Energy Research Institution in Beijing, and you are going to look at the Chinese renewable energy dynamics and give us the context from your perspective. So please, the floor is yours. It's here. I will give you a signal after 9 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for inviting ERI to join this very important event. Unfortunately, Professor Wang Zhongying couldn't make the trip to Dubai, but I'm really glad to share some findings of our China energy transformation outlook on behalf of the project team. So, as a glance of where we are today, to echo what Mr. Messner shared just before, so China's renewable energy market started to take off in 2005 when we first introduced renewable energy law and the feed-in tariff mechanism. Since 2020, we make the carbon neutrality commitment. We are achieving milestones year by year. 2021, cost parity of centralized wind and solar. 2022, renewable capacity surpassed the coal capacity for the first time. 2023, where we are at now, by the end of October, China's renewable energy capacity surpassed 1,400 gigawatts and accounts for just below half of the national total capacity and just below a third of the generation. So we heard from Chancellor Scholz this morning that Germany's renewable share a year ago was 45%, and this year is 60%. So it's remarkable leapfrog development, and we hope that China is on a similar track in this regard. So now China's renewable capacity accounts for 1/3 of the global total. So this progress is driven by an economic of scale as well as investment. So we can see that by the last year, the power generation source, the share of renewable investment accounts for over 75%. And this large scale of capacity drives down the cost by 30% and 75% of wind and solar respectively for the past decade. So when we look in the outlook as we discussed today, so ERI conducts scenario analysis with the design of 3 scenarios, the baseline scenario and 2 carbon neutrality scenarios. The baseline scenario can satisfy Paris Agreement, but the 2 carbon neutrality scenarios is working backwards with China's 2060 carbon neutrality goal, with carbon neutrality scenario 2, the scenario that we dig deeper with the potential of renewables in China. So that's what we are recommending, and I'm going to introduce today. So with all this progress we had for the last decade, China is still here in 2021, where we are only 17.5% in non-fossil fuels, and we are heavily coal-dependent, which is the black side. This is the energy flow diagram. So with our research to reach carbon neutrality scenario 2 in 2060, China needs to transform from here to here. This is fundamental change of the energy system. So you can see that in the supply side, the dominance will be wind and solar, and the demand side, the end-use sectors, we are going to use more and more electricity and hydrogen. So to achieve this, I'll share 3 messages to support today's discussion. One is that to reach carbon neutrality, we need scaling up of all sorts of clean technologies, especially renewables. So this is the calculation we made based on carbon neutrality scenario 2, that with 2021 as 1, and the different selection of clean technologies multiples by different milestone years. And we see that all these are needed by different phases to reach carbon neutrality. For renewables, we see above 10% growth rate for both wind and solar towards 2035. And then from 2035 towards 2060, more new emerging technologies will be needed, especially flexibility technologies in terms of new batteries, and also a vehicle to grid as the EVs fleet becomes larger. So the growth rate will be over 20% per year. In 2035, the demand side response will be 16 times of 2021. And also, as well as all sorts of clean technologies in the end-use sectors. So we can see that these end-use sectors will be reaching very high multiples in 2060 comparing to 2021. So this reminds us that China will remaining to be one of the largest green market in the world. And some industry criticize that we have overcapacity or investment in renewables at the moment. But from our research, from a longer term, we need more. We need the scale of economics to drive down the cost and allow the fast, accelerated transition. Taking wind and solar as an example, we can see that wind and solar in the power system will be the leading technologies and the main dominant, at the same time, cheapest power resource in China. So we can see that by 2060, wind and solar accounts for 90% of the total capacity and over 80% of the generation. At the same time, the price reduced to just several cents of US dollars, which is really cheap power resource. So we can say that wind and solar 2022, comparing 2060, there will be 12 times capacity growth under carbon neutrality scenario. And if we dive a little bit deeper into solar and wind, we can see that to reach carbon neutrality 2, to maximum the potential, we need to invest more in the distributed solar energy, comparing to the only Paris Agreement scenario. And also that will happen, we did analysis with regional, with the natural resource advantages in different regions in China. And for wind, we need to invest more in the offshore wind and to drive down the costs of both offshore and onshore winds. And again, according to different resources in China by region. So second very quick message is that if we want this to happen, if we want 90% of renewables in the power system, we need storage changes outside renewable sector, which is system integration, with three main factors. One, change of coal power. Before 2040, coal power utilization hours will be reducing from last year was 4,300 to less than 1,100 hours per year in 2040, to change into base load to regulation load, which is a first step of phasing out of coal. And second, flexibility. All sorts of flexibility technologies will be needed in the typical week. So with to allow the peak shifting of a solar and wind dominant in the energy system. Three, interconnections of the grid. There will be 2 times of the power traded between east and the central regions in China from our modeling outlook to allow this energy security across grids. Last message I would like to deliver is that we need to consider with a time phrase towards carbon neutrality that 2 examples of the technologies later in the stage to reach carbon neutrality. One is that the importance of green hydrogen serves as both a balancing power load to absorb the excessive wind and solar green power to produce hydrogen, as well as a using in industry sector for the hard abated sectors. So our outlook shows that by 2060, 20% of the electricity in the power grid will be used to produce green hydrogen. So this demonstrates where we use green hydrogen. So end-use sectors will transform from electrification and what we call electro-hydrogenization. In the 2060, you can see that 10% of the end-use will be from hydrogen. Second and last technology is the carbon capture and the utilization. Towards 2055, the last bit of carbon will be captured by CCS. But what we would like to, from our research, to remind is we can't rely heavily on CCS because of its risks. It's very power consuming. It's actually energy intensive as well as expensive, and also the capture efficiency is not 100%, it's 90%. So with that, we need to consider using more renewables rather than rely on CCS plus fossil fuels. So that's the 2 examples of the technologies we had in China. Thank you very much for your attention.
So, dear Professor An, thank you very much for your presentation. This gives us a lot of material for discussion. We have 25 minutes for that, and I would like to ask the panelists to come to the floor. Please. Professor Chu here, wherever you want. So, we would like to dive into some of the issues which are of relevance when it comes to the defossilization of energy systems and energy system being based as much as possible on renewables, as Professor N also pointed out. And I will introduce the colleagues when I'm asking my specific questions to you. I will begin with you. People already know you, Professor Chu. In our debates which we had during the Track 2 dialogue, for you, the tension field between defossilization and energy security was something which he was mainly interested in. How do you look at that after the debates which we have been having over the last 2 years?
Thank you very much.
I think it's on. It should work, actually. It works. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's Chinese. Oh, thank you. 其实这个我想用中文啊，这个来。
So please put on your earset for simultaneous interpretation. This is really a question of high relevance. So track 2 dialogue has been focused on how to strike a balance between climate security and energy security. These are both topics of high concern. Germany has done a very impressive job in this regard. 2 months ago, we visited Germany and learned a lot about how Germany responded to the fallout from the Ukrainian conflict on its energy system and energy security. Germany has a lot of good experience to share with us. I'm most impressed by one thing. So we know that Germany has a special committee for coal buffer or Germany has a new committee for growth, transformation, and employment. And a very important duty of this committee is to strike a balance between these priorities, between growth, employment, and transformation. We were really impressed by the new institution. Secondly, EU, Germany, UK, and other parties have restarted some coal-fired power plants in the wake of the Ukrainian conflict. This is also a cause of concern or even interest for some coal power plants operators in China. Because friends from Germany explained to us this is a temporary arrangement in response to the crisis. But some people in China argue that this is a major setback in climate efforts in Germany. But I told them that Germany has also made a new law on climate protection. So this is only a temporary response. Therefore, it's really imperative for us to strike a balance between energy security and climate security. I have 2 takeaways for you. First of all, we need build up new capacity of renewable energy before the phase out of coal-fired capacity. I think we need to take this gradual approach for energy substitution. And China has some good experience in this regard. Secondly, to promote renewable energy development, we have noted emerging challenges and bottlenecks. In response, we need to accelerate the development of the grid capacity so as to better accommodate or absorb renewable energy power generation. And we also need to build up the capacity of energy storage.
So that we can integrate more energies, and we also need to increase our capacities for storage to ensure that the energy security is ensured. I think this is very important, and this is what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Chu, for your point of view. I'm going further now to Susanne Dröge. Susanne Dröge is Director of our Energy and Climate Department at the German Environment Agency. Susanne, you listened to Professor Chu now, from your perspective? I mean, we have very ambitious goals. I said 80% renewables in the energy markets, electricity markets in 2030, 2035, 100%. Where do we stand? What are the challenges which we need to talk very clearly about also to understand the trajectory better which we are moving into?
Yeah, thank you, Dirk. I feel I can tick boxes when I listen to Professor Xu because we have similar challenges, but of course the scale is not as high as in China, as we heard before. I feel we have some things to share. We have experienced a rapid increase in renewables, 12-fold since we started our programs. Yet Germans are impatient people and we had to slow down. Now we have a speeding up again. Two reasons why. In 2022, the new government took off with this big agenda, and we had this interruption in the energy markets due to the lack of gas from Russia. The effects were mentioned. We had a rebound of coal, but this is a temporary thing. We stand in the middle of this transformation because we want to electrify a lot of the economy beyond the energy sector. So we want to have more electric vehicles, we want to have more heat pumps, we need a lot of investment to speed it all up. And second, of course, we need more power to also bring it into these sectors, produce hydrogen and so on and so forth. So 12-fold is nice, but we need at least as much for the future years. As you've mentioned, 80% renewables in the energy sector in the power sector by 2030, and then even 100%. It's a steep thing to do. We also discussed a lot energy market reform because we have an issue with, in the crisis at least, we have the merit order problem. That means that the last unit that enters the market determines the price. That's a high price in some cases, and that means that the consumers will not benefit from the cheaper energy. And this is still in the making, and we want to do this at the European level because we also would like to integrate the grid further in Europe. So that's another challenge. And so in general, grid expansion, as mentioned, is our key issue together with storage capacities, and the smart grid would deliver also on more storage because then you could manage the capacities much better. And we also don't want to curtail energy production. You know, we're all talking about capacity, but what's in the end in the system is determined by the grid. And that is also an experience in China and in Germany we need to exchange on, because cutting off renewable energy is really a bad thing to do. If the wind is blowing and you cannot use the wind energy, that's a key thing. So that would be my takeaways. And maybe last point, you've mentioned the Coal Commission. I feel that a transition is not only about putting money into it, it's also about the understanding how the local providers of energy could integrate more with the local people so that their ownership increases. And this transformation we have shown to you in the Lausitz area is now a big bet on renewables, including all the new things that come along, also in the job market. So at the moment we face scarcity, but we know that the phase out of coal, for instance, will cost less and less jobs because it's a capital intensive industry after all. So the future of coal is not very labor intensive anyway. So that's the lessons learned and probably the point where we stand in 2023 in Germany.
Okay, thank you very much, Susanne, for that. I'm moving forward to Professor Chang. Professor Cheng is an energy economist from Tsinghua University and also part of our dialogue. And actually, I would like to move into the direction which Susanne talked about at the end of her statement. The energy transformation process is not only about changing the energy system, you talked about that, it's also about employment impacts, social impacts, regional impacts, because in the Chinese context, coal is very concentrated in certain regions. No? So how do you look at that? How to combine structural policies in different regions with the transformation of the energy sector overall in China?
Okay, so...
It works.
Hello?
Yeah.
So I thought you want me to talk about the investment. You intensively. So I think Dr. Xu and Susanna had talked about the connection. So energy transition is, to me, is an approach to realize decarbonization to help climate change. But so climate change is a risk to our society. So we do. It is not only the energy transition is not purpose. The purpose is the sustainable development of our society. So in this sense, not only energy transition is relevant, but I think the economic development, humanity is very important. So I think it is really interconnected. And Dr. An, my good friend, has just mentioned that to realize this energy transition, so the acceleration of the renewable energy installation is a leading factor. So I'm very much agree with it. Secondly, we need to take care of energy security, because if we cannot ensure that, then the whole process will be stopped. So we need a kind of flexible power, flexible capacity. Either we continue to use some of our fossil energy, or we develop the energy storage technologies. But I think both works, but depends on the cost. So you may adapt the current mature technologies or future energy storage technologies step by step. So it is not, you cannot be as Dr. Xu had mentioned, that 先立后破. You cannot remove your own house before you build a new one. So I think that's very natural logic. And then the last measure is CCS. So we decarbonize our energy system by acceleration of renewables. So I want to report to you that this year China has up to the end of October, China has installed 180 gigawatt wind and solar. So I would say that's a historical moment. Plus, besides this, we also have a new policy that to change the current coal power pricing mechanism from only by selling power generation to two parts of a pricing system. That means to capacity price and power generation price. So this gives the possibility for the renewables to develop more, and also to give the flexibility for coal capacity to change their function. So I think this is also a historical moment that to help the development of renewable energy. So I think your question, and from my institute, we did a lot of work on the investment estimation for decarbonization of China. The rough idea is that although the unit price for renewable energy is decreasing, so before I came here, I just checked the newest data. So for the PV module, the price for per watt peak is below, around or slightly below 1 yuan per watt. And I also checked the price in Europe and in United States. In Europe, it is around 0.13 US dollars. That's cheaper. That's even cheaper than in China. So the unit price changed a lot. That gave the privilege to develop renewable energy. However, from the economic investment perspective, we should notice that this the total investment cost it not only depends on the unit technologies. The system is important. So system integration, as Anne mentioned, so it is equally important and equally expensive. So from our study to realize decarbonization up to the year 2060, China needs about 130 trillion renminbi. That's around 2.0% of our accumulative GDP at the same period. And most of them will be from power. But so it's around 120 trillions. And then only a slight half is from renewable energy. Then other more than half are from power grid and energy storage. So that means energy security is really security and stability is really issue. We should not overlook or less estimate that. So this roughly what I want to share.
Thank you very much for your observations and your considerations. I would like to come to Kevin too. Kevin, you are the director of Agora Energiewende in Beijing. You know both countries well, the German context and the German energy system and the Chinese energy system, focusing on energy security issues and system stability, the resilience of systems. In both countries, we are discussing about backstopping renewables. No? The backstopping mechanism in the Chinese context is coal. The backstopping mechanism in the German context is gas, with the idea to substitute as soon as possible gas by green hydrogen. How do you look at this debate? Can our countries learn from each other in this regard?
Thank you very much, Professor Messner, for this very important question. When I look at this question, I feel that it's necessary for us to look back at the history. Once upon a time, there is a country in the world, its economic competitiveness was based on coal mining as well as iron and steel manufacturing. In particular, the country was a superpower in coal chemical manufacturing. Which country I am talking about? Actually, this is Germany in the past and China today. So that's why these two countries should learn from each other. Then if we look at the power sector transformation pathway of these two countries, we probably are not talking about the identical ones, because in the German context, Germany has already phased out nuclear power and is trying very hard to phase out coal by 2030, at least by 2038. But in the Chinese context, we still have nuclear power development along the coast province, as well as lots of hydropower capacity, especially pumped hydro storage. So that's why these two countries probably won't pursue the identical power sector transformation pathway. Having said that, if we look at how Germany is backing up its renewable-oriented power sector transformation, we are talking about near or almost 100% of renewable power system by 2035, because both of the intermittency of renewable as well as the scale of renewable generation. So that's why in Germany there's a very high hope to rely on renewables to produce green hydrogen as part of the solution to back up intermittent renewable as well as phase out gas-fired generation. So by comparison, in the Chinese context, just now, Mr. Anqi had already mentioned the that coal-fired power generation, the utilization hour on an annual basis will decrease from 4,300 to less than 1,000 hours per year by 2040. So that's one. On the one hand, China shouldn't build any greenfield coal-fired power generation. This is very important. If the utilization hour decline like this, you cannot recover your capital investment in just such short time period of time. The second important issue is if China's power generation facility follow such a trajectory, then there's no need to couple CCUS with coal-fired power generation, because under such an extremely low utilization rate, the economics of CCUS cannot work. So this is quite important. Then if we look back at what's going on in Germany, the coal-fired power plant is near the end of its role in the German power system, and there's no plan to add CCUS to this debate. So that's why China should look very carefully about what's going on in Germany. Last but not least, many people are watching what's going on in Germany very carefully. If we look at the pathway of Germany to transition its power system, it's not necessarily the most economical one. It's not necessarily the least technologically not so challenging one. However, if Germany could succeed under such assumption of phasing out both nuclear power and coal, and also could maintain its economic prosperity, this will set a very good example, not only for China, but also the rest of the world. In this regard, I sincerely wish these two countries can continuously work together. When we look at the future, the risk of the supply chain is not the whole picture of the bilateral relations. We also need to look at how to improve trust building between these two countries. So that's why it's very important for key stakeholders from these two countries keep talking with each other, keep working with each other. I'll just stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for that. We are running out of time because we started late. So I have one question to all of you, actually. We unfortunately do not have the time to take questions from the floor because we started late. My last question to all of you is that the energy sector is at the center of debate this time during this COP, and we listen to the goals which are being debated this time. So factor 3 when it comes to renewable energies, doubling energy efficiency towards 2030, moving out of fossil fuels with a certain time horizon. Are you optimistic with regard to these discussions? Are we going out with these kind of goals at the end of the 2 weeks here in Dubai? Or from your perspective, are there other issues looking at the energy system which we needed to look at beyond these 3 issues which are being debated? Renewable energy, factor 3, energy efficiency, factor 2, moving out of fossil fuels. So Professor Chu, the floor is yours, and then we move through the panel to come with Kevin to the end.
Okay, thank you. I personally understand is energy transition is a long way for all of us, not only for China, but also for other countries. The reason is behind very simple. And the energy transitions lead by the surprise of the first one, the speed energy conservation is very important for all of us.
Yeah.
The second one is how to establish high electrification in the end-use sectors. The third one is related to how to speed our low development and green technology innovations. Technology innovation also is a very important impact of the energy transitions. The last one, just you mentioned, is energy market reform. It's very important for China.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Chu. Susanne?
Well, I think coming from the global perspective, of course, it's you can have the front runner idea like Germany now doubling is the key thing in the energy sector. We are around 50% now. So doubling it is our agenda. And you know, the last mile is always the hardest, should hold for all countries. So I think this is where Germany has to prove that the last mile is doable. Other factors, of course, there are more greenhouse gases that need to be looked at. We are talking about methane. Brings me to the point that I think the transparency, like in the global stock days, should be in the interest of everyone who wants to follow up on the Paris Agreement. If there's no transparency and we cannot measure the things we want to manage, we have an issue, right? So I very much hope that the Chinese progress will also emerge in that direction. We had the energy price discussion, energy cost transparency, and I think there are structural issues that need to be overcome at the national and local level, not so much at the global level. Global level is good to give guidance to what should happen nationally. So my points would be that the transition has to have a very steep curve. That's one challenge. And the second would be that we all need to inform each other on our way, which is not a given. So I feel these are two points I would like to highlight.
Okay, thank you very much, Susanne. Professor Cheng?
Okay, so I'm generally optimistic about such a trend. Because first we have a necessity to do that to deal with climate change. Secondly, there are plenty of wind resources and enormous solar. That's our origin for all our energy. So that's the first point. Second, I also see the difficulties. I think it's a big challenge for China. So we did some calculation. So if we triple the capacity of wind and solar only, I think that this is a reachable target. But because we still have a 400 gigawatt hydraulic power, so that we have a limited time, limited year. So to triple the whole renewable fleet, that's quite challenging. I think that's my and then. For the energy efficiency improvement, so China has improved our efficiency quite fast in the past years. So now I think the speed quite saturated. So to double improving speed, that's also very challenging. So I'm optimistic, but we need a lot of more, even harder effort. That's my point.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Cheng. Kevin, please.
Thank you. Professor Messner, for your question, I am cautiously optimistic. In this regard, I have small good news to share with everyone here. Because recently, European Union has launched an anti-subsidy investigation against the Chinese EV manufacturers. So I am very concerned. So I went to EV 100, 电动汽车百人会 to discuss what's the future between China and Germany. Many of you probably know German car manufacturers have entered the Chinese market many years ago, had performed very well in the internal combustion engine vehicle market. However, recent year, because of the ascendance of EV manufacturers in China, there's certain concern and certain anxieties among the car manufacturing industry in Germany. When I talked with senior executives from EV 100, then I knew a recent development because the German leading company like Volkswagen and BBA started to purchase technology, EV technology, from Chinese manufacturers or buy stakes of some of the leading company. And they are accessing the Chinese EV technology from the Intel supply chain, from battery storage to those certain software platform. My key issue here is the message here. Chinese government actually is quite open-minded about this, and there is no banning of accessing of key EV technology at the Chinese side. So when I talked with the future of EV market in both China and Germany, I do believe Chinese manufacturers and their German counterparts should coexist with each other. Because only through health competition as well as cooperation, manufacturers in both countries could prosper from the ongoing clean energy transformation. Let's not duplicate the story in certain clean energy manufacturing industry, because if the market share is entirely dominated by single supplier from one country, then the trade tension will build up. So in this regard, whenever I look at green hydrogen economy, look at electrical market, I'm more confident that Germany and China, as well as international companies from parts of the world, should be able to nurture more sustainable relations with Chinese manufacturers.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for that. Yeah, we have to finish our discussion now. I think what I will take away is that we have been making a lot of progress during the last 20 years, incredible progress actually. When I visited China for the first time in 2004, when I became a member of the China Council for International Cooperation on Environment and Development, we had a low carbon development workshop. This was my first workshop in China. And your then Prime Minister Wen Jiabao said that that is no concept for China. This is something for Europe. And I can tell you that many Europeans thought the same for Europe. No? So now we are looking into a carbon neutral perspective, and we are making, in reality, as Professor An showed us in the Chinese case, a lot of progress. But even though acceleration is needed, and this is what we are going to talk about during the next 2 weeks here in Dubai, I hope that we will make the success needed, and I would like to thank all panelists with a warm applause.